Professional wrestling, a uniquely American art form whose timeless tales of good versus evil have touched countless generations of fans who have reveled in the ecstasy of the world's greatest form of entertainment. And sometimes it's really, really bad. This is the Obtuse Angles Wrestling Podcast with Kyle and Jeremy.
Yeah, we got an intro now, Jeremy.
I know, man. I'm extremely excited about this intro.
We're fancy. We're in the 20th century all of a sudden.
Yeah, man. We know what we're doing now.
Yeah.
We didn't right up until we got that intro. We were just floundering, wondering what the hell, questioning everything, getting kind of existential about what it is we're doing here. And I think that intro may have answered all of our questions.
I think that was also because we were really, really high. Welcome to episode 7 of the Obtuse Angles Wrestling Podcast with Kyle and Jeremy. Today, we cover what, in my mind, is one of the most overlooked, awful angles of all time. And it's a lot of time, too, so we're going to have to blow past it. The Dungeon of freaking Doom.
Dungeon of Doom.
I mean, this thing was bad on pretty much every conceivable level.
It's not hot.
It's not hot. Before we get to that, though, Jeremy, I got to ask you, I've had people actually tweeting me and messaging me on Facebook because they loved your story last time about quite possibly the worst blowjob of all time, the WrestleMania 9 of blowjobs that you got at your house. So you're still a single guy.
Yeah, I'm still single.
You're still doing the online dating thing?
Well, I don't know, man. I hit this revelation. Like, I had this revelation to where, like, I think I'm over it at this point.
Now you're over random hookups, or you're over online dating in general?
Come on, man. Do we ever really get over random hookups?
No, we don't.
No, I think I'm not, like, I did the online thing because it was convenient and I'm like a lazy sack of shit. But I think it's not, like, it no longer holds value. Like, when I started doing it, it kind of had a value because it was easy, it was quick, it was, I'm lazy and I don't want to fucking do anything.
Well, it was like ordering takeout.
Like, I don't go anywhere. I do stand-up comedy. That's the only time I ever really go out, and I go there and I do 10 minutes and go home and go to bed. So the online thing had appeal, but the level of just how fucked these women are online is no longer, like, it's the scales aren't really balanced in my favor anymore.
And not that we want to offend any of our lovely online female listeners.
I don't care. No, I don't. I don't give a shit. You're all.
By the way, as Jeremy has his mental breakdown, you can follow us online at Obtuse Podcast. That's on Twitter. Also, like us on Facebook. All the info, we tell you what we're recording next, when we're going to be in the studio, supplemental videos to watch in case you've forgotten any of the information, like the Dungeon of Doom, which we're going to get to in a second. But back to you, Jeremy. See, this is something that I've said for a while, and I know this has pissed people off. I've said this at parties, and I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, please tweet us, let us know. And I don't want anyone not to listen because of this, but in my mind, if a single 20-whatever-year-old woman is having to go online for a date, there's something fucked in her head.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not like, okay, I'm not saying, like, if you have kids, I get it, right?
Yeah.
If you have kids, you can't go out. I understand. If you work late nights and you can't go out, I get that.
Right.
But if you can't go to a bar or the grocery store or to check the fucking mail because you're a woman and you can't get a date, there's something wrong with you. As Michael Jackson famously said, maybe you should take a look at the woman in the mirror.
That is, that is a direct quote. And I think you're right, and that's the difference between men and women, actually.
Right.
Like, a man has to get gussied up. He has to bathe and shave, and he's got to trim his balls, and then he's got to put on his best getting laid shirt and go out to the getting laid hole to try to fish around and get laid.
I think I'm going to open up a bar called the Getting Laid Hole.
And a woman, all she needs to do is put on a tank top with like no bra, and a little pair of she can go outside and check the mail.
I don't even care what you look like.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
She can go outside and check the mail in her underwear and get laid 3 times before she reaches the mailbox.
I mean, how many times as a man have you went out to a bar with the goal of meeting a woman, maybe not even just to get laid, but to go on a date, to meet a nice girl? You put on your best clothes, you go out with your buddies, maybe even by yourself, and nothing happens again and again and again and again.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it goes 100% of the time.
I mean, from the time I was 20 to 22, I had a sexual dry spell that made 1920s Dust Bowl farmers cringe. And I was trying, damn it. I was trying.
Yeah, well, I live my life by if you don't really make an effort, then you're not really disappointed.
Well, that's a great way to live through life.
Kids, it is, man.
Kids, if you're, which by the way, if kids are listening, I am so sorry.
First of all, kids, if you're listening, stop, turn it off. I mean,
but kids, if you're listening, live your life by Jeremy's mantra, please.
Yeah. Shoot right for the middle.
Right, yeah, shoot for the middle because you might just get out of the bottom.
That's right.
At the rock bottom. So really quickly, and we got to get into the Dungeon of Doom, but in a nutshell, you were telling me very briefly about this girl that you talked to online. You hit her up,
man.
And what happened there?
This girl, man, and then it all goes back. And this, I don't know if it's this one particular girl who's given me this kind of outlook that basically all, or a vast majority of the women online on these online dating profiles and online dating sites are completely fucked in the head, or it's just true. They really all are, because every one of them that I've had any kind of contact in any way, shape, or form have really all, they've all been kind of just like vapid and dysfunctional, and it's
kind of like us, but far worse.
All right, so there's this girl, and she's I wrote her a message because. By
the way, you're shaking right now, and you're looking off into the distance as you tell the story as if you're some sort of war veteran recounting what happened that day.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Indianapolis speech from Jaws. Like I got a camera slowly panning in on me while I'm giving the speech.
Yeah.
So this girl, I read her profile, right, and it didn't have her pastimes weren't mudding,
right,
and fishing.
Which again, if you're not aware, we are from Kentucky, so
that's right.
So that's pretty, yeah.
And in all other activities with the dropped G on the end. So that was kind of appealing. She had kind of a long horse face. Which was fun because she was a ginger, which I find gingers attractive for some strange
That's my
reason.
girlfriend, Ginger. You and I both we like to park our cars in the same garage.
Well, you're about a quarter ginger, aren't you? I'm about a half ginger.
Yeah, I am. I'm a calico. I got red, gray, black, brown, and blonde.
I do too,
in my beard and hair, yeah.
So I hit this girl up, and we're chatting, and we're sending messages back and forth, and I'm trying my hardest, man. I'm really just trying to be charming and nice, and she's giving me nothing, by the way.
Okay. So some might argue that might have been where you should have walked away gracefully.
You know what, man? I've gotten to where like I just quit so easily in the past that sometimes, it hits me that I should even try to make an effort.
Okay. So how many messages did you send this girl with her giving you little to nothing in return?
I would say probably a dozen.
A dozen? Oh, wait a minute.
Well, I mean,
hold on.
Well, I mean, she was pleasant enough. Like I would make a conversation by saying like, "Oh, how are you doing today? You have any big plans for the evening?" And she would say something like, "No, not much. Just staying in." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I think I'm gonna, But I would give her like 3 or 4 sentences, and she would give me like 3 or 4 words.
Okay, so it wasn't like you hit her up and then like there was nothing, and then you did it again and there was nothing, and you did it. So she was saying things, they were just kind of short.
Yeah.
And it was one of those deals where you couldn't tell, like, is she being short or is this just the way she communicates?
Right. Yeah. And here and we after a little while, I start to get the hint. I'm just like, all right, I'm fucking tired. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So who cares? I'm just gonna let this conversation fade out, as so many of them do in the world of online chit chat.
Right.
So she sends me a message, and I've already made up my mind. I'm like, all right, this is going nowhere. So she sends me a message, and she says, I've got a date tonight. And that was like, at that point I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Well,
that was the final nail in the coffin. To which point you replied,
I just said, yeah, I don't want to try anymore. So I just said, oh, okay, well that's cool. Well, have fun and be safe.
Right.
That is all I said.
That's a good, polite way to exit the conversation. However, she did not end the conversation there. What did she say?
No, she didn't. And then I think maybe 8 maybe 8 or so hours had passed at that point, and I didn't hear anything from her. I just thought that was going to be the end of it.
Yeah. So then she hits you back up with...
She does, man. She sends me this long Dickensian-like message. And I'm going to read it for you here, too. This is verbatim everything she said.
Okay.
She said, and keep in mind, listeners, all I said to her was, okay, have fun, be safe, take care.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I said. And she writes me back with this. She says, why be such a raging emo beta fag about the whole thing?
Beta fag. Ugh.
Right out of the gate.
Oh, man.
Right out of the gate. I'm not really on here for dates, just friends. Why is that so hard to comprehend?
What website is this on, by the way?
And this is on OkCupid.
So OkCupid, clearly a dating website. Maybe that's why it's hard to comprehend. But continue.
And she says, does it anger you that I date someone? Did I hurt your precious feelings in some way by being honest? She says, I don't understand the friend zone mentality from men, and you're really no exception. You were denied, yet you try to turn it around on me to make yourself feel better. What in the actual fuck? How did I do that?
Damn.
How did I even? That don't even make sense. That's
Damn.
not even.
Clearly, she was having a spectacular day.
Yeah, man, a real fucking doll, this one.
Was that the whole message? Or
No, it goes on.
Oh, my God.
Let's see. She says, that's what beta males do.
Damn.
That's also, and this is the part where, this is the part where her claws come out, man.
Yeah.
It was really tough. She says,
this is the part where her claws come out.
Oh, yeah, like none of this
she was being dainty before. What does she say now?
She says, that's also why you are a 33-year-old single man looking for dates on the internet while chasing a dead-end comedy dream.
Oh, shit. So let's see. In one fell swoop, in one message with absolutely no provocation, she called you a beta, which to all of our female listeners out there, they probably don't understand why that's offensive to a man.
Yeah, it's not like a little fish that swims in a jar and doesn't have to have...
And again, I'm not trying to make assumptions about our female listeners. Like, we're not making an assumption about this chick. She's a bitch. But but that is such an insult. So she calls you a beta. She says, you're a 33-year-old single guy. You're a loser because you're online looking for dates. She says that your comedy career, your dream, is dead. It's stupid. It's done. Damn.
Yeah, usually I only accept that kind of shit from people who have seen me do a set.
Exactly. Then you can comment.
No, it's no big deal when someone approaches me in a bar or a comedy club and says, you know what, that shit you're doing up there is total dead end.
Right.
Like, I'll accept that. I'll take it at face value. But
right.
I was like, don't you want to see a show first?
Right.
Have you ever listened to the Obtuse Angles Wrestling podcast?
She would. Now, then she would have plenty of reasons to say all the things that she said.
Yeah. And it doesn't stop there. She says that, and you come across as an extremely arrogant individual whose self-righteousness is nauseatingly close to that of evangelical Christians.
Damn. So she threw blasphemy in there for good measure. I want to piss off him. I want to piss off God.
Yeah, she's done, man. She's going for the Savior there.
Yeah, my God. So was that the whole message?
No.
Oh my God.
In closing, she says,
in closing.
So to answer your question, no, you are not good enough to date. I never asked to fucking date her. I don't understand where this is coming from.
So to answer the question that you never asked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
my God. So what did you say? What did you reply?
It's not done yet.
Oh my God, you're kidding.
She said, so to answer your question, no, you are not good enough to date, even if I was looking for someone to date. Assuming you took time to read this far and you are offended, my only response to that is, so fucking what?
Oh, and she quotes Metallica's Garage Inc. Oh.
Okay, so I read that.
Am I evil? Yes, she is.
I read that message, Kyle, no less than 5 times. Just as a mishmash of emotions while I read it.
I'm fairly certain, yeah.
Part of me cheered,
probably with a new glass of bourbon each time.
I did, and I punched myself in the nuts each time I read it. That was the crazy part, man. And I read it, and I said, I need to have the perfect reply to this. So I replied simply with one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, So, you want to go out sometime?
See, that's perfect. That's perfect because she was fishing. She was fishing at that point.
You don't feed the trolls.
Exactly. She was pissed off at you, and she wanted you to come back, but you did not. Did she reply back after that?
No. I have a feeling she blocked me. She may not even have seen that last message. But in my mind, she did, and it just eked her really bad.
See, because you threw a curveball at her. She thought that was going to be one of two reactions. One, she was 90% sure you were going to come back and say some mean shit to her, and that would have justified in her mind why she said those things to you, or you would have defriended her. Which would have validated calling you a beta, but instead you didn't, and that's what pissed her off more than anything.
Well, given everything that she said, I don't think she wanted me to unfriend her or to come back and lash out at her with something. I'm pretty sure she wanted me to fucking kill myself.
I think so. Wow, this chick is evil.
Yeah, but I don't really feed the trolls. I mean, I could have launched into the fact that she was a horse-faced cunt, and she, and pointed out the irony that she was also on a dating website, and how is she not quote unquote beta? But I thought the best approach would be to just formally go ahead and ask her out.
Of course, that's how you do it. Well, Jeremy, we're going to check in hopefully next week if you're still around and you haven't killed yourself yet with your dating life. It's about time, though, we go into the Dungeon of Doom.
Let's do it.
Oh, Dungeon of Doom. Created May 1995. I said this earlier. I really do believe this is one of the worst angles in professional wrestling history. And it has been covered in websites and whatnot, but I don't think to the fullest extent that it should have been. I mean, we talked about Katie Vick in the first episode of this show, which go back and please check that episode out. We talked about a lot of stuff that has been covered ad nauseum, but the Dungeon of Doom was so atrociously bad for so long.
And it's really tough because part of me wants to say, well, I'm a big fan of Kevin Sullivan but I'm really not. And I know that's going to piss off a lot of the wrestling dorks and a lot of the wrestling historians because he has Kevin Sullivan has this great legacy in the Mid-South and the indie circuit across the board. He's got a lot of big fans and he's well respected. I never really cared for Kevin Sullivan as a performer.
Well, Kevin Sullivan got a lot more TV time than he ever would have gotten in WCW because he was...
And it had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he was booking it, right?
Absolutely not. Why is Hulk Hogan the biggest name in wrestling history feuding with this 5 foot, maybe 5'9" guy who at the time did not have that great of a body and was not all that great on the microphone and balding? I mean, And
that thick Boston accent where you couldn't understand most of what he was saying. I
mean, granted, in the 80s, the guy legitimately competed in body competitions, which, by the way, there's video of that. I think it was Mid-South.
I can't wait to not Google that.
No, I think it was it was Memphis in the mid-'80s that they showed this video. It was like 10 minutes long of Kevin Sullivan competing in a bodybuilding. I think it was to get him over as a babyface.
I've got the weirdest boner.
Right, well, kind of like when you watch the Fabulous Ones.
Oh.
So Hulk Hogan comes over to WCW. He has this long feud with Ric Flair that draws legitimately millions of dollars.
Yeah.
They have the big retirement match at Halloween Havoc 94. Yes, I said retirement match. Flair did not stay retired, but it still drew $8 trillion anyway, so I understand why they did it. But
it was $9 trillion, actually.
See, I need to check my facts again.
That's all right.
Hogan needs somebody new to feud with, but he's already beaten Flair countless times. So who does he go against in December of 94? Starrcade. The biggest event of the year.
Starrcade, baby. Starrcade.
The mothership. He goes against Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Bruti.
WCW's WrestleMania was main evented by Hogan and Brutus Beefcake, who at that point I believe was known as the Butcher. So Kevin Sullivan kind of had been feuding with Hulk Hogan in a roundabout way for a while. He created a stable called the Three Faces of Fear who all wanted to go after Hogan. Out of that came the Dungeon of Doom. It was started at Slamboree 1995 when Sullivan was facing the Butcher, Brutus Beefcake, who at that time was known as the Man with No Name. Not to be confused with Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Brutus Beefcake, the disciple, the man...
Or not to be confused when you ride into town on a horse with no name.
Exactly right. Or any of the 45 other names that he had. During the match, which is as terrible as a Sullivan versus Beefcake match you think would be,
Ugh.
out comes this guy who he's called the Master. He was known as the
Let me point out what a real occasion this is. This is maybe one of only a couple of times I've ever seen you just at a complete loss for words.
I can't even describe it because it was so batshit retarded. Like, to me, Triple H dressing up as Kane to fuck a dead body makes more sense than the Dungeon of Doom angle. So during the match, Slamboree 95, out comes this old man who is a former professional wrestler. He's covered in like some weird sordid goo, and he yells, "Sullivan, my son!" Sullivan acts as if he knows this man somehow, leaves the match, he goes up through the crowd, out, and we don't see Sullivan again. Flash forward to the next week on WCW Saturday Night. I watched this as a kid. I was a 9-year-old boy, and I remember thinking, well, this is retarded. And this is footage supposedly shot of Sullivan from a very great camera angles, oddly enough. He's in his wrestling gear, meaning that he's in wrestling boots and these tiny tights.
And no fucking knee pads.
No knee pads.
That always bothered me. Taz did that shit too, and I just wanted to point that out. Anytime a wrestler doesn't wear knee pads, is it just me or does it look awkward?
We're talking about the Dungeon of Doom, and the thing that pisses you off is the fact that Sullivan didn't wear knee pads.
Well, you know.
This is going to be a long episode here, folks.
Hyperbole. Actually.
Sullivan runs through this field in almost nothing. He drops down to his knees, at which point, and by the way, we're hearing echoes of the Master yelling,
yeah.
"Come to me, my son, come to me."
It had that real 80s Memphis promo feel to it, didn't it?
It did, but it was somehow far worse.
I don't even know how that's possible, but it managed.
Sullivan in his thick Boston accent yelling, "I'm coming, father! I'm coming, father!"
Father.
And then he gets down on his knees. He screams into the air, "I'm here, father!" A bolt of light shoots out of the sky, sound effect, and he disappears. He disappears.
Oh, man.
At which point, we find out, I believe, the next week that Sullivan is transported to another dimension, which is where the Dungeon of Doom is happening. Now, we have learned that the Master is an evil genius from another dimension who has tasked Kevin Sullivan, which is why he was renamed
the Taskmaster.
The Taskmaster to face Hulk Hogan and destroy him. And
yeah, it seems legit. Seems possible.
Of course. So, and I'm looking at Wikipedia now, and Wikipedia. See, here's how bad it is. The Wikipedia entry of the Dungeon of Doom is very long, but it leaves out so many things that I had to go back and research myself that I've already seen, but I just wanted to make sure that they really happened, and I didn't come up with them when I was either A, smoking marijuana, or B, huffing gas in high school.
I know you smoked a lot of pot at 9 years old. So
I did. So the group consists of several people, and every single week there is a new vignette of the Master bringing a new warrior from another dimension.
No, I think by vignette you mean Academy Award, Oscar-worthy short film.
Oh, right? Of course. Well, there is the Shark, which looks suspiciously like John Tenta, a.k.a. Earthquake.
No, that wasn't him.
No. Even though he was from another dimension.
Yeah.
And he had recently wrestled in WCW as the Avalanche. It had nothing to do with the fact that gimmick was identical to the WWF's and they threatened to sue them. Nothing at all.
That would be my luck. Like if I ever got blasted away to a different dimension, it would just be some dimension. Like it wouldn't be like a dimension where it's like nothing but really hot women, or
right.
It wouldn't be a dimension where I come out on top and I'm a millionaire. It would just be another dimension filled with John Tentas.
Hey,
it would be horrible.
There are far worse dimensions to be in. You know, in an interview that John Tenta had later on, he mentioned that he had a tattoo of a tiger on his arm. Yeah. And when they made him the Shark, he took it upon himself to undergo several hours worth of cover-up for the tattoo, where they transformed a shark into, or a tiger into a shark.
That's actually a gimmick in itself. Like each time he he starts working a new character, or we say he works under a hood, he just gets a new tattoo covered up over top of it.
Covers it up and he gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And which, by the way, he wasn't even the Shark for very long because he would feud with the Dungeon of Doom a few weeks later. So there's the Shark. We have vignettes where Kamala, the Ugandan giant, is introduced. We have a vignette where the Zodiac, who is also the Butcher, that, the Zodiac, which, by the way, so when the Zodiac debuts and they call the Zodiac forth from another dimension to join the ranks of this group that's fighting Hulkamania, he comes from like a dimension where everything is black and white. Everything is like a yin yang. And he can only shout, yes, no, yes, no, yes.
I remember the way the cameras used to shoot him in that black and white ensemble he wore as the Zodiac.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember like if he moved too quickly, he looked like an optical illusion.
Yeah. Colonel Parker. Colonel Parker is somehow in the Dungeon of Doom because he managed Ming.
Strike that. Actually, my luck, I'd be blasted away to another dimension filled with Colonel Parkers.
I love Colonel Parker. I'm not even kidding. Colonel Parker is one of my favorite gimmicks, my favorite managers of all time. Wow. If I had a wrestling promotion, he would be the #1 heel manager in the I'm not kidding. Just because, and we're going to get to this on a later episode, WCW Beach Blast 93. Where he, and I quote in regards to Sting and Davey Boy, offers them 2 tickets to the retirement home of their choosing.
Well, at least he let them choose.
So
that's the important thing.
And Big Van Vader. Big Van Vader is also introduced to the Dungeon of Doom. And I
kind of see that.
Yeah, well,
that makes sense.
Well, that makes sense. So they build towards Vader versus Hulk Hogan, and they're going to do that at one of the pay-per-views. It was Bash at the Beach. And Vader goes on what is called his Roadkill Tour, which consisted of squash matches left and right that would eventually lead to the destruction of Hogan. We'll get to that in a second, but the cherry on top of this shit sundae,
my favorite part,
that was the Dungeon of Doom, is the vignette that introduces the Giant. If you have not seen this video, look it up on YouTube now. As a matter of fact, if you have seen this video, still look it up on YouTube now.
Watch it again.
In this vignette that introduces the Big Show, Hulk Hogan is transported to the Dungeon of Doom. And so he's transported to this dimension through the magical power of the Master. Which, again, you'd think that... Oh, God. I can't even... Okay. Because as I'm talking and as I'm explaining this, there are like 40,000 plot holes that are coming into my mind, and I can't articulate one thought. Why did the Master want to kill Hulk Hogan? What history did the Master have with Hulk? It doesn't matter. But you would think that if the Master wanted to destroy Hulkamania and destroy Hulk Hogan, and he had the magical powers to transport Hogan to any dimension of his choosing, he would just transport him into space. Okay, so...
The podcaster in me wants to pick up the dead air where you get lost for words, but I'm so taken aback by the fact that just a very few times when you actually don't have something to say, I kind of taken aback by that. Like I want to pick up the pieces there and kind of so we don't have any dead air, but it's so weird to.
I know. I understand.
Odd, man. I don't know.
So in this video, Hogan is transported to the Dungeon of Doom. He extends his hand to a fountain of water. And by the way, this set looks like it cost them all of $43 to build. It looks like something that didn't even make an episode of Thunder in Paradise. And Hogan reaches out his hand to this stream. And
Can I deliver the line?
Yes. And then he jerks his hand back after he touches the water, and he says,
"It's not hot."
Like, what? What? Like, I understand it's hot or it's cold, but it's not hot.
I think he had expectations for it.
Right. It was like when he was a wee Hulkster, his mother came to him and said, "Listen, Terry, if you're ever transported to a magical dimension, touch the water because it'll be hot."
Yeah.
And then at that point, he realized his mother was a liar.
It just... blew his mind completely.
So the Master and the Taskmaster begin berating Hogan. They say they're going to kill him. They beat him up. And then out of a block of ice, for some reason, the block of ice explodes. And this thing, again, looks like something that you'd buy at Toys R Us to play with your friends in the weekend. The Giant emerges, looks into the camera, and gives an evil laugh for what felt like 3.5 minutes.
Yeah. It really did go on way too long.
And it was one of those things where it's like, I'm sure even as green as Paul White was at that time to the entertainment industry, he thought, okay, I'll do it, and that's the end of the segment, so they're going to cut it. And it was like the director went, you know what? I'm not going to cut that laugh. We're just going to let it go on the whole time. So it just gets worse from that. The Giant is then said to be Andre the Giant's son, which we know is not the case.
Yeah, no. Is that where they introduced that? Because I remember, people talking about it. Kayfabe, the pending kayfabe. They were like, "Did you see that guy that's on WCW now? He's the Giant. He's Andre the Giant's son." Right.
Which honestly is to me, that's not that horrible of a storyline. But it was like they couldn't figure out what the Giant's motivation for destroying Hulk Hogan was, because at the time, like the next week, they said the Giant wanted to defeat Hulk Hogan because Hogan beat his father at WrestleMania 3.
I was going to say, yeah, he hip-tossed his daddy and then pinned him.
Right, which it was a body slam.
It was a hip lock.
So, going back to our previous podcast episode of WrestleMania 9. But it was like, so does Hogan want to does Giant want to destroy Hogan because he beat his daddy? Or does he want to destroy Hogan because he's a monster from another dimension that Kevin Sullivan has enlisted to kill him?
Yes.
We don't know. And apparently
yes to both.
They didn't know. They didn't know. So the feud continues. They wrestle in a War Games match at Fall Brawl where Hogan, Randy Savage, Lex Luger, and Sting take on Kamala, the Zodiac, the Shark, and Ming inside of the double ring cage. If Hogan's team won, the stipulation was that Hogan got to give 5 minutes alone with Sullivan inside of the cage. Before the 5 minutes were up, however, after Hogan's team won, the Giant came down to the cage and attacked Hogan and then snapped his neck.
Yeah.
They did the whole deal where he broke Hogan's neck.
They held a microphone to his neck so you could hear the bones break.
Did they?
No.
I see. That was one.
I wouldn't have been surprised.
There's so much video that encapsulates this angle. I saw a ton of it, and I didn't even watch all of it. It was like a lot of the stuff I remembered I didn't watch, but a lot of the stuff where I was like, did that really happen?
Yeah.
I checked it out. So they do that, and then, oh God, you didn't even see this one, I bet. So they... Oh, this is so stupid. So there's a segment later on, and by the way, Hogan turns halfway heel at some point during this feud, and we're going to get to this right after this. There's just so much awfulness in it.
Yeah, that halfway heel turn, actually, they decided to conveniently forget that when he would come back 2 years later and start the NWO thing.
And he really did turn heel?
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of a prototype, but we're going to get to that in a second. So there's a segment during this feud after Hogan has his neck snapped where he pulls up on a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, and this is the fakest, most staged-looking segment I've ever seen because Mean Gene is outside. Where? Who knows? But he's outside with all of these fans who are just waiting for Hogan to pull up on his Harley. Hogan pulls up on the Harley, and he's like, "What's going on, brother? Yeah, I'm here." At which point you see, like from 45 different camera angles to make it more dramatic, the Giant come in driving a monster truck.
Yeah.
He drives, and then Hogan jumps off the motorcycle.
Shades of Steve Austin, Vince McMahon.
Yeah, the Giant runs over the motorcycle, at which point Hogan angrily runs up and starts beating the monster truck as if he's going to break the monster truck, but not before the Giant can stick his head out of the monster truck and give yet another patented evil laugh. So, Hogan, you might break his neck, but goddamn it, you do not fuck with his motorcycle.
No, you don't. That's just something you don't do.
Which would lead to one of the greatest bad wrestling moments in the history of professional wrestling, the Monster Truck Sumo match at Halloween Havoc.
You've lost me, man. I don't even remember that. I'm pretty sure I would remember something like that.
You don't remember? You seriously don't?
No.
I didn't even mention this because I thought, oh, well, surely Jeremy's seen this.
No, man, I didn't recall it. Now, I did a lot of research for this episode and stuff, and I dug through a lot of the old Dungeon of Doom vignettes, and I really had a blast. But no, I didn't recall the monster truck sumo match.
Well, that's good though, because surely somebody out there is listening who has either forgotten, they've blocked it from their memory.
I was going to say they repressed it. I think
they just don't know. So they're in Detroit on top of Cobo Hall, and I'm not kidding you. There is one monster truck for the Giant and one monster truck for Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan's monster truck has giant arms coming out of it.
No, not okay. I do remember this.
Remember
yes,
that, yeah.
yes. Okay.
But
yeah.
I believe, though, you might also remember, because remember back in the day when WCW was so hot that the monster truck show...
Because the arms were like kind of tanned and they looked like two big hot dogs coming out of the front of it.
Yeah, but the WCW was so hot back in the late 90s that on TNN they had a monster truck show, and there were like 3 WCW monster trucks on it, which I believed this monster truck or a version of it was also used on that show.
Yeah.
So they have this, and what it is, it's on the roof of the arena. There's a giant circle. There's 2 monster trucks, one driven by the Giant, one driven by Hulk Hogan. And they're locked together, and there's a sumo match, and whoever pushes the other guy's monster truck out of the circle wins the monster truck match. So at Halloween Havoc, they have this thing advertised as first, they're going to turn into monster trucks, and they're going to fight each other, and then they'll have a world title match.
Autobots, roll out.
Now, I will say this. I was a 9-year-old boy, and as we've already documented on this show, I was a big Hulkamaniac, right?
And a big pothead.
And a big pothead, apparently. So I'm a huge Hulkamaniac, but even I, in the early days of the Dungeon of Doom, where there's the different dimensions and Hogan is being transported to them, I, as a 9-year-old boy who knew almost nothing about the business, said to myself, well, they're not even trying to make it look real now. I was the audience. I was exactly who they had in mind.
You're like a little Bill Watts.
But I will say, yes, I was. God damn it, why are there mats around the ring? Why are they jumping off that middle rope? But I will say this, as I'm watching the commercial for the monster truck, like the commercial for the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And they had the pictures of Hogan and Giant morph into monster trucks. I thought to myself, I have to see this. It was like...
There's no other way. Yeah.
I transformed from a little Bill Watts into a mini Vince McMahon. The spectacle! So they do the match... And Hogan pushes the Giant's monster truck out of the circle because Hogan can't even job in a monster truck match.
He can't even job to 10,000 horsepower.
But Lord knows it wouldn't be a wrestling monster truck sumo match if they didn't have a brawl on the roof afterward.
Oh, yeah.
So they get out of the monster trucks and they start feuding and brawling on top of the arena, at which point Hogan, they fight to the side, like to the edge of the roof of the arena.
Yeah, and one of them, am I right? One of them takes a spill off the fucking roof.
Hogan knocks the Giant off the roof into the Detroit River.
Yeah, because... you can. That's fine. You can live through that.
But not before the Giant on the edge of the arena waves his arms in comical fashion. Goes whoa! He gives Hogan like 15 minutes to grab him, and Hogan stares. And then when the Giant falls, that's when Hogan conveniently, no, brother. Oh my God! Oh my God! So
then he respawned a little bit later
that night. And without any explanation, the Giant comes back that night to fight Hulk Hogan. Apparently, according to Bobby the Brain Heenan in an interview later on, the original idea, and I shit you not, was to put a fish into the Giant's tights to make people go, oh, he fell into the river.
Was this Bischoff or was this Fry? I mean, who was...
It wasn't Fry. Well, Bischoff was in charge at this point. Yeah. I mean, so whether or not Bischoff came up with this idea, and this strikes me as a Kevin Sullivan idea, Bischoff had the final say over whether or not they were going to do it.
Something about a fish in tights kind of alludes to Kevin Sullivan or something. I can't explain why. It just seems like it kind of points to him.
So during the match, the Giant wins by DQ when Jimmy Hart turns on Hulk Hogan by hitting him in the head with a microphone. And the Giant wins the world title because Jimmy Hart, as Hogan's manager, was the one who signed off on the contract. And Jimmy Hart knew he was going to turn heel, so he put a clause in where if the Giant wins, then he gets the title via DQ. But then the WCW executive committee says, no, there's too many shenanigans here. The title is up for grabs. Next month, we're going to make the winner of World War III be the WCW World Heavyweight Champion.
We covered World War III, too, a little bit.
We did. We did. 60 men, 3 rings, 1 clusterfuck. And again, as a kid, I'm like, 60 guys? That's twice as good as a Royal Rumble.
You forgot to mention $20 for a whole seat, but you'll only need the edge.
Yeah, exactly. You'll only need the edge. So even though in the match Hogan is feuding with the Giant, Randy Savage wins the world title in World War III, and they go on. They continue to feud until Super Brawl 6, and they have their Giant match. By this point, Loch Ness is in the Dungeon of Doom. The British wrestler who wrestled for a long time, he sadly would die a little bit later. The Yeti was there. We haven't even talked about the Yeti.
How do you have a show about bad wrestling angles and you haven't even covered the Yeti yet? 7 episodes in.
The Yeti was a character who was not a Yeti, even though his name was a Yeti.
Yeah.
He was a mummy that emerged from yet another block of ice. Are you confused yet? The Yeti debuted on an episode of WCW Nitro where the Dungeon of Doom put a block of ice out in the entranceway, and all night long, Eric Bischoff is selling this thing like, what's this about? What's in that ice? And then at the end of the show, pyro goes off, it explodes, out emerges a mummy. So when the Yeti never wrestled a match because he was covered in toilet paper, the only thing he did of note was grab Hogan and start humping him to death.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Yeah, this would be the part of the video where we cue the cornet face.
Yeah.
Say, fuck this company.
So even though the Dungeon of Doom began to fade after that, we would be remiss if we didn't mention how this whole thing ended in the Tower of Doom steel cage at WCW Uncensored 1996.
All right, unpopular opinion. I thought that was one hell of a gimmick match. On paper, I think.
On paper.
More than what it proved to be.
You know what? I agree with you. I remember everybody at the time slammed that thing, and I understand why they did, but...
Well, it's legitimately fucking dangerous, for one.
Well, it was, because, again, it was actually a three-tiered cage.
Three-tier cage, yeah.
Because you had, okay, the way that the pay-per-view was set up, and by the way, I watched this whole pay-per-view a few weeks ago.
Sorry to hear that.
It upheld the rich WCW tradition of Uncensored being the shittiest show of the year each and every single year.
That is a rich heritage, yes.
So the whole pay-per-view, every match besides the main event, which was the cage, took place in a regular ring in the middle of the arena. Then in the entranceway, where the entrance would be, there is another cage, which is surrounded by, there's another ring surrounded by a cage, and on top of those cages are 2 other cages.
Slightly smaller cages.
Now, it's very dangerous because, again, when you see the guys in the cage, it's almost like the floor is slumping in a way where...
Yeah, the floors were just mesh, were just chain link.
They're just mesh, and they're going to fall through them at any minute. Like now when you see that's
legitimately like what, a 30-foot fall?
Oh yeah. And they were doing spots where they were teasing, throwing guys to the floor.
Yeah.
The one notable thing about this match, and it had many notable things, but to me the most notable thing was Arn Anderson is in sweatpants. and
he just got back from the strip club.
Well, it was almost like Anderson knew this thing was going to be shit, and he was like, I'm not getting my gear on for this
he's not
shit.
even lacing up his boots for it.
See, because here's the thing. The reason that this match was so terrible is Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, who both by this point were feuding with the Dungeon of Doom, because after Randy Savage won the world title, the Dungeon would feud with him. Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage wrestled about 375 guys in this match. And WCW was very careful not to call them the Mega Powers. but they accidentally called them the Mega Powers about 6 times on this pay-per-view. So Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage in one match defeated what was dubbed the Alliance to End Hulkamania. Again, keep in mind, Savage and Hogan defeated Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Ming, the Barbarian, Lex Luger, the Taskmaster, Z Gangsta, and the Ultimate Solution. In one match.
Yeah, that's. I think as a wrestler, like if you wanted your career to really take off and blossom in the '90s, just grab right hold of Hogan and ride it all the way to the top.
Yeah.
Because he's not going under any like. He throw like what was that? Eight guys against him and Savage.
Yeah,
and they just come out victorious.
Well, the thing about and a word really quickly about the Ultimate Solution. I had to look this guy up. Ultimate Solution. I believe that was his only match he ever wrestled in WCW.
He was on the Jersey Shore, wasn't he?
He wrestled. He wrestled for a little bit in the early '90s, and then would later go on to be Bane in Batman and Robin, because he was so massive.
Yeah.
He died very young, and Hogan actually was one of the 3 guys, along with James Caan, who did the eulogy at his funeral.
That's odd.
Very odd. But sadly, the most noteworthy thing about the Ultimate Solution was that when WCW brought him in, he was not named the Ultimate Solution. He was named the Final Solution. And if you know a little bit about history...
Semantics.
The Final Solution was the term that Hitler gave to the extermination of the Jews.
Yeah, I can't imagine why they would change that.
Now, WCW claimed...
I can not see why they would change that. I don't understand.
WCW claimed ignorance to the fact that they named a wrestler after the greatest genocide in the history of the world. Nonetheless, he was named the Ultimate Solution.
That's the safest thing you could do is just plead ignorance. No, we had no idea. We're not big history buffs here.
No, we just so happen it's parallel thinking. And it's,
Great minds think alike.
Speaking of which, I understand the connection there, because after watching all of this boning up for the episode, I do think Kevin Sullivan should be thrown in a gas chamber.
Yeah.
Is that tasteless? Is that
for a normal show it would be.
Okay,
probably not this one.
Obviously, we here at the Obtuse Angles Wrestling Podcast are against the Holocaust. Now,
just so we're clear.
Just so we're clear on that. This match was such a clusterfuck that I can't even begin to describe what happened in it. Now, granted, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and it's really hard to do so when trying to defend this match.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Hogan and Savage fought them all in the same cage at once. They started off in the top cage, and they fought Anderson and Flair, and then at which point they locked Anderson and Flair in to that cage, and then they had to work their way down to the second cage, where they would fight through Ming and Luger, I think, and then all the way down to the final cage, where they would fight Z Gangsta, who was Tiny Lister, the guy from Friday, and Ultimate Solution. But the match is insane because they fight out up the rampway up to the legitimate ring, which we've already established the match cannot end in, and are perplexed as to why the referee is not counting for the pin.
Yeah.
They then fight all the way back down the rampway again into the cage and fight inside it. Just don't even know.
Man, this episode is just it's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
You're exasperated,
The
sir.
lack of logic is exhausting.
the lack of logic in every single facet of this episode, every single part is just so over the top ridiculous. Anybody who doesn't know a lot about wrestling could believably think that we're just making this shit up.
We're not. I swear to God, all of these things happen. So Hogan and Savage win. The Dungeon of Doom would continue for a little bit, but that was pretty much where the feud with Hulkamania and Hulk Hogan ended. There was a WCW Nitro from West Virginia a couple of weeks later where officially Hogan beat up everybody in the Dungeon of Doom, because why not? It's Hogan.
Yeah.
Apparently, so Hogan on... Okay, so in 96 on Nitro, a few weeks later, the feud officially ended when Hogan beats up the Dungeon of Doom.
Right.
Hogan would go on one of his many vacations because he had a sweetheart deal with WCW where he only wrestled a few pay-per-views a year. Hogan would not return until Bash at the Beach 96, where he famously joined the NWO and turned heel for Wink Wink the first time.
No, I didn't hear anything about that NWO
Oh, no?
stuff.
The third man, you hear about that?
I didn't hear anything about it.
Jeremy's being sarcastic, ladies and gentlemen. I guarantee you somebody out there is listening and go, what the fuck?
That's the NWO. It's only one of the biggest angles in wrestling history.
Apparently, on that Nitro before Hulk Hogan left for months on end, he was supposed to have been beaten down by the Four Horsemen because, hell, you're going to be gone for months. Why not get somebody over? But in Hulk Hogan's mind, he wanted to beat them all up because why the fuck not?
Well, because he's Hulk Hogan, that's why.
And I think,
question it.
And I think that, this is what it all boils down to. WCW, Hulk Hogan had that sweetheart deal with the company. He had creative control over his character. So that means at any point in all of the shenanigans and bullshit that happened, he could have looked at it and went, no, this is fucking retarded.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I'm not doing this. But he didn't because...
But very few times has Hogan ever really done that in his career when he's had the opportunity to.
Right, and this whole angle was Hulk Hogan's wet dream. It really was, because there was a stable of literal monsters. Monsters that went after him, and he defeated week after week.
Plowed right through them.
Plowed right, yeah, exactly, just like he did Bubba the Love Sponge's wife. Just plowed right through him.
It was only a matter of time before that came up.
Exactly. I can't believe we've done so many episodes about Hulk Hogan and we have not had the Bubba the Love. We might do that on a future episode. The Hulk Hogan sex tape.
That sex tape. Yeah, that was a pretty bad angle.
And I talked about this a couple of the little Hulkster.
That thing was fucker. Who knew Hulk Hogan was carrying a Pringles can in his pants?
I've never seen that before.
You've never seen the sex tape?
No, I don't want to jack off to Hulk Hogan.
No, I don't. I didn't. I don't. What?
Jeremy goes home and watches it every night.
Yeah, well, I kind of loaded up a dual screen on my laptop. On one side of the laptop, I've got the Hulk Hogan sex tape playing. On the other side, I've got the Fabulous Ones promo playing. So
oh man,
just go into town.
That is all
guaranteed nut every time.
Oh man, right there. So no, but I talked about this a couple of minutes ago when I said that I would get to it. Earlier in the angle, and I hate to work backwards chronologically, but, at least this makes still more sense than the Dungeon of Doom did. After the Giant broke Hulk Hogan's neck, they did an angle on Nitro where they shaved his mustache. And Hogan kind of sort of turned heel. He dropped the...
He lost his mustache and started reevaluating his life.
That's what it was. God damn it, brother. I don't even know who I am anymore. He ditched the red and yellow and he came out and he dressed in black and he cheated, but they didn't go balls to the wall.
But he was still over though. That was
yeah. Well, and they abandoned the whole thing too. And Hogan said that it was just mind games he was playing with the Dungeon of Doom.
Yeah.
But there was also
just a poorly written angle.
Yeah, and then he set fire to a copy of the Wrestling Observer, the Dave Meltzer well-known dirt.
Yeah. The dirt sheet.
The dirt sheet.
He probably read a review about the whole Dungeon of Doom vignettes.
I don't know what else I could say. I really don't. We've done a lot of, and again, this is lighthearted.
I've never seen you this exasperated before.
I do because you know what? I'm going to say it. This was the worst angle of all time.
You really think so?
I do. And it wasn't even like this angle drew any money. Like, here's the thing. It lasted forever and a day. And while this angle was going on, Nitro debuted, WCW got big ratings, but I don't think any of it was because of the Dungeon of Doom. And I think the company knew how stupid it was, right?
Yeah.
I've been going back on the network and watching Nitro.
Yeah.
Which apparently I'm the only one who does that because WWE recently, they leaked information that the reason they're not adding any old stuff is because, quote, practically no one watches it. Go out there and watch old shit, goddamn.
Yeah, well, what else would you do with WWE Network? Who is only watching the... I go back and watch all kinds of old shit. That's why I got the WWE Network, so I could go back and watch a library of world class and at ECW, you know, before he took off when it was back in Philly. And
yeah, fuck that old
all that
shit.
stuff. Yeah.
It's Adam Rose matches for me, baby.
Oh, man.
No, but I went back and I watched every Nitro. They mentioned the Dungeon of Doom. Hogan feuded with the Dungeon of Doom, but they never had any of the stupid, batshit, retarded vignettes on there. And I think it was because they said, hey, Nitro is our flagship show. We're going up against WWF. We can't do this stupid bullshit on night. Let's save it for Saturday night, which became the B show after Nitro when Nitro debuted. So, but again, I think that the reason WCW drew money at that time was because WWF was in a creative and financial slump.
Right.
WCW had the pockets of Turner, obviously, and they brought in guys like Dean Malenko and Rey Mysterio.
Oh, they were buying up talent left and right.
Oh, Brian Pillman and Eddie Guerrero and Ric Flair was cutting killer promos and Savage was there. It was awesome.
Basically, anyone with talent in Extreme Championship Wrestling was... They just jumped right over.
Right. But what I'm saying is I think it's so terrible. I don't think it necessarily damaged the company, but it didn't do any favors for the company. And again, if I, as a 9-year-old boy who is a Hulkamaniac, am looking at this going, well, this is retarded. It was retarded.
Yeah, it's very clear.
I'm sweating. I'm so angry right now. Well, speaking of mental retardation, not that I'm speaking disparagingly of mental retardation.
Your hypertension is showing a little bit.
You have to be so careful these days. Even on a podcast where we say whatever in the fuck we want.
Right,
people, they get offended by... I get offended by the Dungeon of Doom. They get offended by stupid shit. Something else that's going to offend you. Next episode, Jeremy, we're going to do, from 1999... The Heroes
of Wrestling.
Heroes of Wrestling.
The greatest pay-per-view of all time.
Which, by the way, is available to watch in its entirety on YouTube.
Yeah, but there is only 90 seconds of it that you really need to watch.
I watched the whole...
I'm not going to tell you what that 90 seconds is, but damn it to hell, you're going to know it when you see it.
I watched the whole thing today.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
The whole thing.
I skimmed it.
Well, that's okay, Jeremy. I'm going to fill in any holes for you.
That's okay.
I know
you don't have to.
You're waiting with bated breath to hear what happened. Heroes of Wrestling. And with that, please follow us on Twitter at Obtuse Angles. Follow us on Facebook at the Obtuse Angles Wrestling Podcast. We are two former professional wrestlers, current comedians. He's a podcast host. I'm a radio host. And we're two wrestling fans who love it and would just like to maybe make a couple of bucks off of it, and if at the very least, entertain you with the bullshit of wrestling past.
And don't forget chicks and to get laid.
And the women. Jeremy needs the women. He needs them.
Yeah, he needs them like he needs another slice of bacon or another hole in his head or whatever.
You're still going to fuck him, aren't you?
Yeah.
All right. We will see you next week of the Obtuse Angles Wrestling Podcast. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye. Jeremy, say goodbye.
Good night.